afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Columbus Metropolitan Club. I'm Matt Barnes, one acre at NBC4 today, proud to serve as a member of the Board of Trustees for CMC, and we are so glad to have you here for today's forum, made possible in part through the generosity of the one and only LYNN GREER, who is with us today. We're going to embarrass you, LYNN. Where are you? Stand up, be recognized. Thank you so much for your support, for allowing us to engage in conversations like this. Thank you to all of our sponsors today, the LYNN GREER Legacy and Civic Engagement Fund, which celebrates inclusion and equity for the LGBTQ plus community, the United Way of Central Ohio, and Huckleberry House. And of course, thank you to the Ellis for their generous support. We're also grateful to the Center for Human Kindness at the Columbus Foundation and the Columbus Dispatch for presenting our live stream, which is being carried right now on all of CMC's social media platforms. It's a lot of people. Let's thank them all right now. All right, let's get to today's forum. This should be a good one. We're titling it Facing Hate and Finding Hope, America's LGBTQ plus community under attack. The lives of LGBTQ plus Americans are under greater threat in 2023 than at any other point in the country's recent past. In fact, this summer, as reported by PBS and other outlets, the Human Rights Campaign declared a state of emergency for LGBTQ plus people in America. The rights of parents to make gender-conforming decisions for their children, of drag artists to perform, or for venues to host drag performances, as well as bans at schools from discussing gender with students, are all under attack through legislation. So today's conversation will explore those topics and what friends and allies of the LGBTQ plus community are doing to promote acceptance, understanding, safety, and freedom. To introduce our esteemed and, may I say, well-dressed panelists, especially this right here, my gosh, come on. Get that in my wardrobe. Please welcome Robert Fortier with today's sponsor, the United Way of Central Ohio, to the podium. Robert, come on up.
Good afternoon, everyone. First, I'd like to start off by thanking the Columbus Metropolitan Club for facilitating this very important and very necessary conversation. For many decades, United Way of Central Ohio has been committed to creating and maintaining a community where everyone has equitable opportunity to participate and contribute to their own success. And as a trusted partner in the community for 100 years, we understand from experience that the best solutions are crafted by diverse perspectives and diverse stakeholders. Whether it's through United Way's Project Diversity Pride Leadership Program, or through the more than 90 nonprofits we support that provide basic needs and equitable educational opportunities for every person and every community, United Way understands that a strong community is a united community. In the face of the recent wave in anti-LGBTQ plus legislation, we're reminded of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King's words. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. These words emphasize the interconnectedness of all struggles for equality and human rights. And it's in the spirit that United Way remains steadfast in our commitment to the LGBTQ plus community, to do our part by keeping equity at the heart of our mission. And that's why it's my great pleasure to introduce today's panel. Please welcome Khris Goins, the president and founder of the Black Transmen of Ohio. Bennett, executive director of the ACLU of Ohio. Amanda Erikson, Director of Education and Outreach for the Kaleidoscope Youth Center. Equizi, creator and performer of the one and only Virginia West, and the show director for District West. And your host, returning to the LYNN GREER Forum for a second year, please welcome back Ronald Murray, Associate Director of Health Advocacy with Equitas Health and Board Chair for the Stonewall Columbus. You can read more about today's panelists by scanning the QR codes at your table. And without further ado, I hand it over to Ron.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Okay, let's give our panelists another round of applause, please. Because though it's a serious topic, I feel like we in church. I even put on a bow tie with polka dots. Hello. So thank you first for having us here today. And so I know our time is short, and so this topic can get really, and some of our panelists are really love to talk, so we're gonna get right into it. So I'm gonna start off with the first one, jump right into it. To my panelists, whoever wanna jump in first, what should the audience know about each of you, your work and your journeys and your experiences? Whoever wants to go first, and keep it 1 minute.
All right, since I guess I'm first in line, I'll go first. A little bit about me. I'm Khris Goins, founder founder of Black Transmen of Ohio. My journey was I started a support group in the beginning of 2020, and in that support group, I realized there's a lot of Black trans guys out there that didn't know the resources, or that people like me that we existed. Right, we're invisible to where nobody's seen us. So our mission at Black Transmen of Ohio is to increase visibility and the resources for the Black, trans, masculine, and non-binary AFAB, a female assigned at birth, for those who don't know what AFAB is. That's the community that we serve for Black Transmen of Ohio. 45 seconds? All right, cool.
Again, my name is Ben. I'm representing the older segment of our community on this panel. And having come out in college in the mid-'80s, I have been a part of this fight ever since I joined a gay straight student alliance at the University of Kentucky, and was a frightened college freshman attending my first meeting. And since then have been advancing this work through support and board participation on the National LGBTQ Task Force, through work I did in Kentucky before moving to Ohio 23 years ago. I now have the great opportunity to do this phenomenal work with our team at the ACLU of Ohio, in which LGBTQ work and personal and bodily autonomy is one of our core foundations of our mission and purpose.
Hi, my name is Amanda Erikson. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I'm with Kaleidoscope Youth Center. Kaleidoscope is Ohio's largest and longest serving organization that's solely dedicated to serving and supporting LGBTQ youth and adults. So we do that through our drop-in center downtown, as well as behavioral health services, housing services, and my role as education and outreach director is really kind of taking that safe space that we've created within our drop-in center and our housing services and extending it into the rest of the community through education and outreach. So we do professional development for teachers, anybody else who works with young people, from LGBTQ 101, how is Gen Z looking at gender and sexuality, because it is very different from even subsets of various generations older than them, to best practices for working with queer and trans youth in today's very rocky political climate.
Hi, my name is Khris Equizi, and I'm the founder and creator of Virginia West. And he said to be short, so I'd like to take you back to 1977. I'm kidding. I'm the founder of the West family. Most of you probably know Nina West. We have about 35 to 40 performers. And I'm also the show director and co-founder of District West, which is one of Columbus's newest safe spaces for the LGBTQIA+ community. And our family has been very blessed to be the conduit to raise over almost $3 million now for local and national organizations.
Thank you. So you see, we kind of stacked the panel, so we didn't bring you no chumps. So Ben, since you're the self-proclaimed elder statesman of the group, I'm gonna start with you. The topic is Facing Hate, Finding Hope, America's LGBTQ+ community under attack. It seems like this is nothing new, or is the history repeating itself? So I'm gonna ask you, does the world feel different now, since you were here back then, or is this something that just emerged?
Well, the ACLU has done a report already this year that more than 530 pieces of anti-LGBTQ legislation has been introduced in legislatures across the country. This, unfortunately, has set a record more than any other year, and it's actually more than double the amount of anti-queer legislation that was introduced in 2022. So these are very perilous times, and we're very much under attack. But when I was first asked to be on this panel, my mind went back to 1992. I'm also a United Church of Christ minister. I was serving Open and Affirming United Church of Christ Church in Kentucky. And there was a case that had overturned Kentucky's sodomy law in '92, and there was immediately an organization formed, and I was its first co-chair, called the Kentucky Fairness Campaign, that was formed to fight back against anti-LGBTQ legislation that was the blowback from that Kentucky Supreme Court decision. And we have been doing that time and time again. My mind goes back to 2004 when Karl Rove set up an initiative across the country to pass anti-marriage bans and enshrine them in the Constitution as a way to use us as a scapegoat and a ploy to re-elect George W. Bush in 2004. My mind even goes back to 1978 in California, where the Briggs Initiative was being debated. It was being put in the California ballot that would have actually excluded all gay and lesbian people, the terminology at the time, from serving in any public schools. Our mind can go back to times in which, we have always been either in the legal system considered criminals, and the religious system considered sinners, and in the medical system considered sick or psychopaths. So it's nothing new, and it's always been because we are a convenient scapegoat, and it's why educational forums like this are so darn important.
Thank you, Ben. That sounds kind of overwhelming, and I can only imagine being an LGBTQ plus youth right now and hearing that this is nothing new, hearing that I'm just coming of age and I'm just finding out who I am. Amanda, at Kaleidoscope, from Kaleidoscope's perspective, what is the experience of you think the LGBTQ youth in Ohio like today versus in the past?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question to consider, like today's environment and experiences versus in the past, because I think those of us who are adults like to think, oh, things are so much better now than they were in X decade when I was a teenager. And that's not really true, they're just different. A lot of folks have noticed that it seems like there's so many more LGBTQ youth now. There aren't, they're just coming out more. For a lot of them, they are feeling safer within their friend groups to be coming out and being themselves. We're seeing more representation in the media, in society. Like, if you look at it from a very high level, maybe it seems easier or more okay to come out with an LGBTQ identity. But then when we poke into the local level, the state level, we have bills that are being argued right now today, in fact, at the State House. They're discussing whether or not trans students should be able to use the restroom that they want to use in school, as well as school board policies around whether or not kids should be allowed to change their name and pronoun at school, which restroom they're allowed to use, whether we can have LGBTQ curriculum in the classroom. And when we say LGBTQ curriculum, right, we're talking about family structures and love and diversity. But those things tend to be sexualized, right? And that's what students are seeing. So we know that schools right now are not generally safe for LGBTQ youth. Folks that are experiencing anti-LGBTQ discrimination at school are 3 times more likely to have missed school in the past month, so their GPAs are lower. They have higher rates of anxiety and depression, substance use and abuse. All of the mental health and physical health risk factors that we could think about are higher with those folks that are experiencing that anti-LGBTQ discrimination. And that could be legal discrimination, talking about policies and bathroom use, or it could be little things that maybe we're not even aware of, like a singular teacher saying, no, I'm not going to call you that name in the classroom, whether or not there is a policy around it.
Thank you, Amanda. Anybody else want to jump on that? Nope, okay, hear nothing. No. I think that when we talk about being a youth in school, and I remember back in the 80s, and I'm not going to tell my age, but I'm higher end of the 40s, closer to my 50s than my 40s. But I remember back in the 80s, in those 80s movies, you would see in the restroom movies when there was a bully, and they always hid in the bathroom stall, and you always see someone banging on the door, the bullies are coming. Now the bullies are the ones who are supposed to protect us. Where are youth going today when there's legislation coming down the line that's actually coming to be the bully for them? They're doing it legally. Like I think recently, I think it was in a place in Ohio where they tried to change the rules where they were trying to have something on the ballot coming up recently, and the Secretary of State had decided that they were going to put on the ballot coming up soon, but the Supreme Court said they couldn't do it because he didn't get the right signatures or something. He didn't go the right process. I might be quoting wrong. I just read a few minutes ago, so I'm on 2 cups of coffee, so I'm going to get to you in a few seconds, so don't quote me. But while I'm finding it for you all, I'm going to go to my next question for Khris with a K and Khris with a C. Y'all didn't know they spelled the names differently, right? Khris with a K, Khris with a C. Specifically about concerns of trans community and the community of drag performers, do they overlap and how are they unique? Are these communities being attacked? Why would you say to someone who wants to understand the difference between these two communities, and why should there be someone speaking out and advocating for both communities together and separately?
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. There's overlap in the trans and drag community. I always say, you know, I was raised in the drag community by trans women in the 1990s and early 2000s, specifically Jasmine Knight. And she taught me that drag is what you do and trans is who you are. So they both overlap because we do have a lot of drag entertainers in town that are trans women and trans men. So I never like to be the person that is speaking for both because there's so many trans issues that I don't know about and that I'm unaware of, but I do know a lot of them because they are my friends and family. And the good thing about Virginia West is that I have a microphone and I have a platform to be able to use that microphone, so I can speak up for my trans brothers and sisters. And we are both under attack, you know, from all of the laws that are happening, trying to be passed about the trans community, just to the simple fact that they're trying to ban drag shows, which, you know, I started this back in 1997, and I never would have thought that this would be what we're worrying about in 2023. You know, the fight back then was just for, I went to the March on Washington in 2000, and the march then was for just basic rights for the LGBTQIA community. And then we fought for marriage equality, and I think we all kind of rested on our laurels after we got marriage equality because things were looking up for us. And then all of a sudden our trans community started being attacked. About restrooms and about, you know, how they identify. And then all of a sudden the drag queens come under fire. And I think what's happening is every time we win one battle, they're trying to start another battle just to pull the wool over all of our eyes, you know? So yeah, I think we just recently had the march at the State House for drag rights. You know, we're not trying to do anything sexualized with children. That's just not happening. We have a program at District West called Studio West, and it is the first of its kind in this country that is a dance program that is for LGBTQIA kids or from kids that come from families that identify as. And we have over 25 students that are registered for every class that we do, and they put on a little show and we entertain, and I can guarantee you the show I'm doing at midnight is not the show I'm doing at noon. Even though sometimes at midnight I do Elsa, it's just a different version of Elsa. And to kind of bring it full circle about this is that I watched the first few shows that we did with the kids, and I saw kids come in that were very sad, and you could tell they were being bullied at school, or they didn't have a lot of friends, and it was beautiful to watch them make friends that were like them or that they could identify with. And I watched this little boy come in, and he always kind of had his head like hung low. And it was our Christmas show last year, and he came in and he was very excited. And he said, "Virginia, can I help do anything here?" And I said, "Well, if you want to put the tablecloths on the table, feel free to." And he did that, and he came back and he said, Can I do anything else?" And I said, "Well, you can help me by putting the candles on the table," right? And you could just see he was in such a different mindset than he was 2 months prior. And I kind of started to cry, and I realized it was because he was dressed how he felt appropriate. He was in a pink football jersey. And I thought, this is the work that drag queens and trans entertainers are doing to make our communities come together and make children feel safe. So yeah, I definitely think that we are under attack for things that are completely wrong. People are putting out wrong information about us, and I think that we both, the trans community and the drag community, need to speak on our own, but we also have to speak together. So yeah.
Can you hear me? Okay, cool. I figured it out. All right. So my thoughts around this, do I think they relate? Yes. Are they attacking both drag and trans? Yes. Not just that, they're also, I feel like it's even deeper. That's eventually going to go to Handmaid's Tales, right? Because they're going to say women can't wear pants because it falls into gender nonconforming. But I feel like all of this, kind of even to circle back to the first question, is social media. Right, I feel like that is what's making all of these issues so big right now, because everybody can get into their little social media bubbles to where it just feeds into them. Now, because I'm a techie, if you don't know, my background is in IT. So like that algorithm comes in and feeds you all of this, right? And so that's what you feed into, and that's what it gives you. So living in these bubbles, you get all this negativity, especially when it comes around drag, period, right? Because even these people that's attended drag shows that I know, I've seen, watch articles where they had pictures of these individuals that's trying to, bad talk drag shows, that's been in them, that have best friends that are, but you're still gonna turn around and put these bills in, which doesn't make sense, right? It's because they fall into these, in my opinion, they fall into these bubbles. And then it just feeds into their mindset. And I think COVID got into their brain and has affected them somehow. But
We forgot to even mention we had Nazis show up at a drag brunch. That is crazy. I never ever would have thought, we thought we had to worry about the Proud Boys, right? And we never would have thought that we would see a Nazi flag walking down the street instead. So it's just absolutely crazy, and it's coming from these very extreme groups. And I think, we got a lot of phone calls from CNN, and we got phone calls from NBC to do interviews, and I didn't want to because I thought by talking about them, it was just giving them even more power.
I think, can you hear me? Testing. Thank you for bringing it up, Khris, because I think even for myself as a black gay man, I thought the fight that my mother and my grandparents, I didn't think I was going to see them marching in front of me in my lifetime. I was like, oh, gee, wow. So ancestors, what's the rubric? What do we do here? Because I think that in certain groups, you thought that fight was over, especially for me as a black man. When you hear about the Nazis, I remember seeing it, and I remember I was on my way to the event, and I remember getting text messages from across the country from friends, are you okay? What do you do? I don't know. My mother died. Who do I call and ask? Where's the rule book for that? Because now we have to pick up where they left off again. We thought we were done. Now it's a whole nother fight with a whole nother group, and now we got to link arms and figure out how do we link arms again? That's something we wasn't prepared to do. Segue. It seemed to, at one point, it seemed like we were having a slow-moving arc into acceptance and LGBT+, and we were getting to a place where everyone was accepting and we were walking hand in hand. Then it seemed like we were just getting reversed. What do you all think happened? What put the car in reverse? How did we get here?
I don't know if I should say this, but I will. People are emboldened by a leader, and I think, unfortunately, with Donald Trump, I think people kind of came out and felt empowered by his hate speech, and I think it was always there, but when you have somebody with such a large platform as the president doing it, I think it makes it much easier for your hate to be exposed.
I think it's also important to recognize we're up against a very sophisticated opposition that does very targeted research to how they can instill fear and misinformation in the greatest number of people. So they don't come after marriage anymore, because now 70% of people, including a majority of Republicans, support same-sex marriage. So that's no longer a convenient target. So they have to drill down to see what are the next areas. Where can we create fear? And we know that fear is such a powerful motivator. I think one of the things that is most concerning for me is that while we talk about queer oppression, which is real and it's all around and it's baked into legislation, the one thing we have in our community and our arsenal is amazing queer joy, We have amazing queer resilience because we've faced this BS for so long. We know it's nothing new. We're going to devise new ways to educate, to come out, to show people who we are, and also our gay solidarity. And when they try to pit one of the letters of the alphabet against another, it is so critically important that we understand what they're attempting to do in those moments is to take away our joy, our resilience, and our solidarity, and nothing gets at the heart of that than getting than these outrageous, just crazy pieces of legislation that would remove our drag and trans performers who are truly the heart and soul, I even feel like our spiritual leaders in our community, and trying to rip that out of the soul of our community. It pains me so much.
I want to add to that too when it comes to the fear part of it, because I feel like it's fear to create distraction. Right, because I feel like they're especially when it comes to like of course it's all political, right? So I feel like it's a distraction from what they really should be doing. Picking on gay people is easy. It's something that's been going on since centuries. Shoot, I had a conversation with somebody earlier in the week where they were talking about, you know, that gayness is what brought down the Greeks in Rome. I was like, sure, I'll do my research on it this weekend. But I was like, again, I was like, but my argument, my retort to that was that it shows you that gay isn't new, right? It's been around since then. So why is it now, you know, circling back? Because we're an easy target because there's so little of us, but there's so many at the same time. I believe everybody has a little bit, just a smidgen, but yeah. So that's my thought on it. Right? This is more of like a fear and distraction to kind of like bring everybody together because people are just not happy with themselves. So, yeah.
Thank you for that. And that kind of takes us back to what Amanda said earlier. I remember last month I was at the United States Conference on HIV/AIDS, and someone made a statement that the generation that we're in now is probably the most LGBTQ plus generation that we've ever had in history. They have the most access to technology, the access to terminology, but they don't have that access to the history that was there before. Part of that is because the history is decimated from the 80s and 90s through AIDS. But the other part of it is that now that with technology and social media and access to things, people think that trans and queer and gender nonconforming is something new. We've always had an uncle, auntie. We've always had an Aunt Ben, those things in the back of the day. Your aunts always had a special friend that lived in the house. You just never spoke to those things. Now they have the words to describe who they are. Now they have the words to say, this is who I am right now. And I think that it's important for us to recognize that we've always been here in plain sight. Now we just have the words to put us in plain sight. To some of us and some of us all. And understanding that we have to figure out, as different as we are underneath the umbrella of the acronym, we have to figure out how to work those differences together, because the other thing that I've recognized here, especially in Columbus and throughout the state of Ohio, oftentimes people pick at the differences and put us against each other. How do we work together collectively amongst our differences and make us stronger? Oop, they're thinking. I threw a new one on them.
For me, when it comes to the whole LGBTQ plus all that, we're all brothers and sisters, right? Nobody can pick on my little brother. Nobody can pick on my big sibling, but me, right? Unfortunately, we have that mindset, right? Nobody can pick on us but us. But there's times where we need to show. I feel like it's time that we not do that anymore, right? We have to show them that no matter what, we're going to be there, like, because they see that too. Like we see that's why we know about it. We pick on our little siblings, our other siblings. People see that, whether or not we want to see it, we think it's done in the dark or not, but it's there. So we have to like change our mindset that we're all, that we're together in this, so that they don't see that and be like, yeah, the lesbians don't like trans guys either. So I'm not gonna like them too for whatever reasons, and like that gives them fuel. We need to stop giving them that fuel. Right, because they can use that. That's my first thought.
I think within our community we create issues that we don't have amongst each other, right? I think a big part of it is social media. You can't tell the tone in someone's post, so you take it the wrong way. snowballs, it creates issues. And I could speak for the drag community. It happens a lot with us. And I try never to get involved because I realize it's just not worth it. And like you were saying, the weaker we are on the inside, the easier it is for the outside to come after us. And I think the easiest thing is just to always remember to just give a little bit more grace to each other.
I think it's so important that we recognize the intersectionalities of our communities and also the intersectionalities that we have not dealt with well, and recognizing our own internal racism within the LGBTQ community, our own classism, our own sexism, our own ignorance around other parts of our community. So this continual education that we do outside our community has to remain a focus inside our community. And in terms of solidarity, I think of this metaphor a lot because, excuse me for going back to 2004 when our constitutional amendment was passed, and we pretty much knew it was going to pass, and leading up to that ballot, it was so depressing. And in the large church that I'm a member of in Cleveland, the pastor of the church, the Sunday before the Tuesday vote, asked everyone who was going to be impacted by that constitutional amendment, if it passed, if they would stand. So my partner Jim and I stood, and other couples stood around the room, and then some other single LGBTQ people began to stand, and then some parents of LGBTQ people began to stand, and then some social workers began to stand, and teachers began to stand, and friends and family, and I can get emotional about this because I can still remember the moment where everyone in the room was standing, because an attack on one of us is an attack on all of us. So the attacks on the trans community, the deference that is paid to the crazy amounts of rates of black trans murders, when these things happen, we have to envision ourselves in a room. And who are the people who are standing first? And then we don't hesitate a second, but to stand up and to stand there with them until everyone in the room is standing together, recognizing an injury against one is an injury against all of us.
I think we also just need to listen to our youth. And that can be really, really hard for older generations of any identity to do. Our young people are using identity labels that we have never heard of. They're claiming pronouns that we have never heard before. And what we can do for them is be open to that, right? And let them continue to be youth, to continue to explore who they are and what that's going to mean in the future. I think we have too many adults who are kind of trying to shut youth down a little bit and close them back into a box, even queer adults trying to close queer youth back into a box. And we really just need to be open to all of the galaxy and infinite number of pronouns and words that we can use and identities that we can claim, and remember what it was like to be a teenager, and how important that exploration is.
Thank you, Amanda. I like that utilizing the youth, because I've learned being an advocate and activist for many years is that as I get older, my drive doesn't change, but how I participate in it does. My back may not be as strong as it was, my feet may not move as quickly, but I can embolden the youth to do that and listening to their ideas. Now, we're not going to burn down the establishment, that's not going to happen. However, but as I get older, I'm able to figure out how to do it on a macro level and embolden and teach them how to do it, because you want their strength and their energy, but you also want them to learn the history, and another way to do it as they get older to learn to the next generation. Because I think what other thing that's happening that Ben alluded to is that transparent, honest conversations have to happen internally and intra between each of our groups, internally amongst ourselves. Being honest about, we all may be under the umbrella, but I have my own biases against you as well. Having those internal conversations also yield to compromises and understanding. And if we don't understand each other, how the heck can we expect someone outside of us to understand how we are? So understand, thank you for that, Khris, because I've always been one of those, like, I was speaking about my fraternity. I may not like all my line brothers, if you have a fraternity member. I may not like all my line brothers, but you better not say nothing about one of them. Now, I may talk about them all day long, but you better not run up on them. However, same thing, but you can also use the same analogy in the community. Because as a social worker, when I have my social work students, I always tell them, how you talk about people behind their back resonates in front of them. We're not stupid. We understand what you're saying about us behind our backs. And so the way that you feel in your meta communication, your body language, does dictate how your true feelings. One final question. It's gonna be a doozy. Y'all ready? Hope. Boom. Where are you finding hope? What do you think the future holds, and where do we go from here?
I find my hope in the generations that are coming before, after me now. I get to see a lot of. I'm probably the oldest drag queen that I work with, right? And it's okay, I'm all right with that. I have a lot of Botox that makes me look their age. So they teach me, it's very different from how I grew up, right? We were always afraid, and they're not afraid. They have taught me to be a better activist. They've taught me to be a better ally to the other letters in my community, and they've taught me to be a better entertainer. So they keep me on my toes, and they give me hope that the fight that I might not have left in me 30 years down the road, that they will continue to fight for me and for what I believe in.
Well, Khris stole my answer, but I was also going to say young people. Like, the youth are where that hope is. They have so many fantastic ideas. They have so many fantastic thoughts. And, you know, we just need to keep building a space where any of that is possible for them in the future.
1 second, I messed up. I got to read. We'll move to the question from our live stream and in-person audience in just a few minutes. If you have a question, please make sure you make your way over to the microphone now. If you're watching online, please type your questions into the chat before we take audience questions. Continuing our final question. Ben, thank you.
Well, I don't mean to be cheesy or look like I'm sucking up to the people at table number 2 over here, but I work with an incredibly dedicated staff of 32 people and a board of about 24 that just is never ceasing in their commitment to all the important issues that matter to this community and so many communities. So that is truly like my daily source of hope. But I also have to be honest, I'm a ghetto gay at heart. I'm a ghetto gay at heart. I love my people. I surround myself with my people. I support my people when they're running for office. I prefer to spend my time at dinner and bars and drag shows with my people. And I draw as much energy as I can from them, and I try to give it back to them. Because I know it is this resilience piece that I've mentioned so many times before. Like, it doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from somewhere, and it comes as this organic thing that we know in our community we have to continue to propel and support. Life is hard, and we're in this to make it less hard for anyone.
Okay, for me, when it comes to hope, right, I was trying not to fall into the youth part of it because that was my first thought. Just wait, let's see what I do with these words. All right. But I also want to not only add the youth, but also want to add in, because I'm a techie, social media, right? Because everybody has these access to see what's happening. If you don't see what's happening, you're asleep, because I think everybody can see it. So and then again, it's kind of circling back to the youth. And when I say youth, I don't mean like my kids. Like my oldest is 21. Right? So I know, I saw my face. But I'm not just talking about like his generation. I'm also talking about mine as well, right? I'm mid-30s, and I feel like we have made a huge difference. Like, I'm not doing the same things out there that my mom's generation is. Like, I literally just had a conversation earlier in the week with my grandfather. He lives in San Francisco. He was like, this is the most gayest city in the world. But he still put a lot of homophobic things in my ear when I spoke to him. out of fear, right? And I would say from my generation and younger, we're not as fearful for what we want as previous generations. So that gives me hope, because I'm strongly believing, as anybody knows me, if there's something that you want and you really want it, you're gonna go out there and get it, period. Nothing can stop you. And I feel like right now, we don't want this anymore. We want to stop whatever this cycle is of the attack on our community, and we're going to stop it, period. It may not be tomorrow, but it might be this weekend. I don't know.
Thank you. Doug?
Very much. Thank you to today's panelists, and Ron, thank you for moderating. Question, what would a federal, or how would a federal Equality Act help the LGBTQ plus community? What specifically might it do, and what are the chances of something like that actually passing?
Was that directed to me, or yes? Well, we need it. We definitely need it. It has always been our approach, even in Ohio, that we would pass local ordinances around the state as a way of growing the movement towards eventually passing an Ohio Fairness Act. And in the same way, we are passing statewide protections around employment, housing, and public accommodations. But that is only piecemeal. We need federal legislation. We know that that legislation has been introduced. It's been introduced repeatedly. We must build the political power and demand that the candidates we support enact that federal legislation. And until we get it and make sure that it is durable, there are always going to be people who do not live in the gay ghetto that I live in, that don't feel the protections that they so deserve across this country.
Hi, I'm Jaren Terry. I'm the president of PFLAG Columbus. We mainly serve parents, family, and friends of LGBTQ plus folks. And so I want to start by saying thank you to all of you. And also, I was at the Halloween show, Khris, for the Studio West, and the joy on those kids' faces as they perform, just like kids anywhere, have a good time in costume and having fun. So thank you for that. And you know, everything people have said about our youth, I agree, but we cannot put all of that future on them. We really need, I'm talking to the straight people in the room now, we need to pave the way for all children to thrive, not just the ones you perceive to be straight, because you really have to be careful who you hate. It might be someone you love. And so my question, yes, I do have one, is, and I think maybe the other question is been probably answered, but what can we do, especially at the local level? Because what I'm seeing at the school boards in Dublin, in Upper Arlington, in all the communities where, you know, people stand up straight and dress right and go to church, horrifying people are coming to the school boards for the specific purpose of harming LGBTQ children. What can we, as straight people, do to pave the way for all children, including, most importantly, those who are marginalized? Thanks.
You know, I've been thinking about this a lot recently, and it comes down to, it's once again coming up upon election cycle, right? And I have a member of my family who is very socially liberal, but always votes Republican and was a Trump supporter. And we would fight constantly. And my mother would get so angry. My parents are very Democrat, and I grew up in a very Democratic family. But my mother would get so angry at me and say, "Why are you fighting? Why are you fighting with him? Who cares? His vote doesn't affect you, or you're not going to change his mind. But you know what, Mom? You need to be fighting too. I think if we all have those uncomfortable conversations with our family members, it starts in our own families. And that's where the bigotry is beginning. It's people that we love that we're we're remaining silent to keep the peace in our own families, right? I think that's where it begins. We educate them and we have those uncomfortable conversations and we fight to show them and educate them. I think that's the easiest way to start it out.
And since I know the incredible work that you do with Columbus PFLAG, I just want to say that there's no more powerful organization for straight people to plug into than parents, families, and friends of the LGBTQ community. And I want to thank you for your leadership. Important organization to my family. My mother was a national staff person at PFLAG for many years. And we have to flip the narrative. They're talking about protecting kids. The kids they need to protect are those that they are harming. And that is the voice of parents and all allies, is you are harming children. You are not doing good to children. You are harming children, and you're creating harm for them that will last not just through the rest of the school year, it will last for the rest of their lives. So thank you, Jared.
Hi there, my name is Lori Trent, and I'm happy to be here with you this evening. I am currently a member of the Upper Arlington School Board and have been serving as president for the last 2 years. I am the first openly elected LGBT public official in Upper Arlington. Thank you. My wife, Callie, who many of you may know, have been married for 25 years, and we have twin boys that are sophomores at The Ohio State University and proud graduates of Upper Arlington High School. So my question, oddly enough, goes to the schools. I ran because kids, if they can't see someone like them, they can't be someone like them, like me, however that goes. And so my question is, what do we do as a school district? I absolutely agree we need to bring children along from kindergarten all the way up and just explain to them there are all different kinds of families in our community, and each one is deserving of the same respect. So I struggle with this on a daily basis. It keeps me up at night. I'm running for re-election because I believe so strongly in what we need to do to help our students. So I would love any ideas that you have, and feel free to reach out to me after, as I will do to you. Thank you.
My thought, kind of going even back to the previous question, it's always the loudest person in the room that's always wrong. Right? So, and I feel like the simplest answer I came up was, we've got to be louder. Right? But then it circles back to a question that I'm asking, even though you're asking me the questions. The question I have too is, what can we do to be louder? Like, what else is out there can we do to be louder than the person that's wrong? Right? And unfortunately, like, it's show up, period. Because if you don't show up, because like the hardest thing you got to do is show up, and that's what needs to happen. We have to show up, because even if you say the most quietest thing to the person beside you, that's one more person that heard a message that can pass it on to somebody else. Because as my mama taught me, a closed mouth don't get fed. So if you're not speaking up for yourself or your kids or your community, nothing's going to happen, nothing's going to change. So we got to continue to go out here and talk and speak and show up for everybody.
I think you're doing it, right? You're an elected lesbian woman that is the president of the school board. And I think that it's so much easier for people to show up and fight against us when there's not representation of us there. And you're there. So it's going to be much harder for them to come and say their bigoted views against you with being right in front of them. So please run again and win again.
I also want to remind people that we oftentimes think as voters and as active citizens that what happens that impacts our lives most directly is what happens out of Washington, D.C. And while that is true to some measure, what's happening at the State House in Columbus is having a direct impact not only on our state, but in the way they are trying to overtake home rules so that local communities can't do what they want to do for themselves. And many of our staff members come from being former legislative aides at the State House, and the one thing they want us to constantly reinforce when I and we are in groups like this is that people first think about calling their U.S. Senator or their U.S. Congressperson, and they think that that has a big impact, and it does. But very few people call their state rep or their state senator. And so if you can marshal together 22 phone calls on an issue that is before a House committee or Senate committee or is on the floor, you can do a wellspring of good. So let's keep our eyes focused on what's happening here in Ohio that is directly impacting our home rule and these horrific state laws that they're trying to pass.
Hi, I'm Hallie Tate. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am a queer woman. I identify as a lesbian. I'm very proud of that. I'm a guest with Call Management Systems today, and thank you very much for having me. My question is a little bit lighter, and I just first want to say that I came out 6 years ago when I was 30, and I put myself in a box for 30 years. And I always felt like such an outsider with my family, my nuclear family, my extended family. I'm the only person that I know who is out in our family and or queer. Who knows if people are in there just not out, but it was really scary for me to come out, even when I was 30. And I've since then found so much joy and hope in the chosen family that I have today, and some of them are sitting right over here. I really could not be more grateful to be queer. It's my pride and joy, and it's how I live every single day. So with that, my question to you all is, what does queer joy mean to you? Because it has saved me.
I think for me, it's just being, like you said, being authentically myself, and living the life I preach about and walking that walk. Being able to, I was talking earlier with Matt Barnes, we went to the Pumpkin Show yesterday, and I walked in and immediately did not feel welcomed by some of the stands that were there selling items. And I grabbed my partner's hand, and we walked down the street holding hands. I felt liberated. I didn't care. And nothing happened to us. Years ago, I would have thought something would have happened to us, right? Somebody would have yelled a slur, or somebody would have beat us up, and I'm 46 years old, and I don't have time or the mental capacity to care what somebody else thinks of me. That's their problem, and that's my queer joy.
I'm actually extremely introverted for someone whose job is speaking in front of large groups of people. And I'm also married to someone who is even more extremely introverted than myself, which is amazing. And so for us, like, our queer joy is just like existing together, creating this little queer family, right, with our cats and our chickens, and I'm here to bring the lesbian energy, and just to be quiet, right, to just be quietly ourselves and not have people like really fighting against that, to be able to just walk down the street hand in hand and not worry about it, to get out of those boxes that like society wants to cram you into, and just realize that like whatever works for us is possible. Like, we can be whoever we want, and we can do really whatever we want without any kind of restraint or being held in like that.
I think you both nailed it. I think living our authentic lives and helping other people to live their authentic lives is one of the most beautiful things we can do.
Okay, what they said. All right. But also, like, for me, of course, I've always been the one to where I'm gonna be me. I guess I'm that generation that I'm gonna be me. Even when I was living as female, as a lesbian, I didn't tell everybody. When everybody had these coming out stories where they said they came out, I didn't. I was just like, this is me, this is who I'm with, you like it or you don't. Because what you do doesn't affect me, right? Unless you vote, it's a whole nother story. But that's always been me. And now who I am today, I would say what brings me joy today is this. These conversations and these spaces like this to have these conversations and actually talk about things versus being stuck. Because I deal with a lot of people that stay in their head, have conversations in their head, but to come out of your head and have these conversations with other people that think like you but don't think like you, I think is amazing. So that's what's joy for me.
Well, I got the wrap-up notion from Doug, so that kind of concludes our little section here. But you know me, I don't follow rules. No. I'm gonna give my last 2 seconds. So I'm gonna leave you with my personal favorite quote: "Get in good trouble, necessary trouble, and redeem the soul of America," by the Honorable John Lewis. And 5 things we can take away from John Lewis: speak truth to power, vote always, become a racial equity broker, you're never too young to make a difference, and as the 5th one should be, remember who you are. That's it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ron, the hostess with the mostest, man. My goodness, fantastic. I hope you all found today's forum informative, educational, enlightening. I know I have so many friends in the LGBTQ plus community in my life, not just here in Columbus, but nationwide. And these conversations need to continue to happen. We all need to stand up for our friends, our brothers and sisters, and it's just too important not to. So I also want to encourage you to all be at Highball, where me and Virginia and my coworker Monica Day are gonna have a good old time next Friday or next Saturday. So we're gonna do it up. Thank you to our sponsors, the LYNN, GREER, Legacy, and Civic Engagement Fund. LYNN, thank you again once again. The United Way of Central Ohio and Huckleberry House. And thank you to the Ellis for its support and hospitality here. Also want to thank all of our virtual seat patrons, the Center of Human Kindness at the Columbus Foundation, and the Columbus Dispatch for presenting today's live stream. And then a very special appreciation to today's panel: Khris Goins, Ben Guest, Amanda Erikson, Chris Equizi, and Ron Murray. Big round of applause to all of them. Thank you so much for your candor, your honesty, and just being who you are. Really appreciate it. Please make plans to attend next week's forum, Whose Rights Win? Gun Violence Preemption and Home Rule in Ohio, right here at the Ellis. We hope to see you then, if not then, at another forum very soon. Have a great afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us.